so amazing. But she's got an amazing story to share with you. Those of you that were at Wire in 2016, she shared this story, and I just can't get enough of Miss Betty Graham. So Betty, come on up.
In a cabin on a hill in Butcher Holler. We were poor, but we had love. That's the one thing that Daddy made sure of. He shoveled coal like a poor man.
Oh my gracious. How wonderful to be here in a room full of badasses. I love it. So, you know, Debbie. How about Debbie? Is she amazing? Oh, thank you so much for those wonderful things you said. A generous introduction. I just would like to know something from all of you. Tell me, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want success, recognition? Do you want travel? Do you want money? A Bentley, or a baby, or a balance, right? Bette Midler said it best. She said, I want it all, and I want it delivered. But Debbie asked me to sort of share my story, and I know that many of you may have faced far more serious challenges than I, but I do hope that something I say today will resonate and makes you realize the power that I know each of you have inside you, the power to get whatever it is you really want. And I want you to own that power. I want you to own it. You know, I think that I love what Oprah said. Oprah said, and I wish you would say it with me. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Let me hear you say it. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And I love doing videos, Michelle. I'm reminded, though, here of Newton's law. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction, right? Or to say it another way, the energy you put out there does come back to you. The energy you put out is the fuel that brings you that power. And as you go about trying to decode, you know, how the world around you works, I just urge you to listen to what our head coach, TF, says. He says, know your purpose, right? Know what you stand for. Know the interior why that you want whatever it is that's driving you towards your success. Now, our wonderful Tom Ferry talks about life by design, right? Not by default. So I thought I would share my own influential Ds that have contributed to my relative success in our field of real estate sales. Yeah, like the wonderful country singer Loretta Lynn. I too was born a coal miner's daughter. My daddy was a cotton farmer. We were in Alabama, where when money was short, he would leave for a few months and go to the local coal mines in the hills and work. He knew how to make ends meet. And watching my father's actions taught me my first lesson, discipline. It took a lot of discipline and devotion and darn hard work to feed those 8 little mouths in our family, in our nest. Well, with too many, by the way, that one is I, the defiant, right? With too many bad crop seasons in a row, they packed us up and moved us to the promised land, which was the southeast corner of Missouri. Well, we were Southern and we were poor. But we never gave that any thought. We never felt deprived. In Missouri, Daddy executed a 100-acre lease on a 100-acre parcel of dirt. Now, that dirt was covered with dead tree stumps and thick brush, and with his hands and 2 mules, He plowed that into furrows, into rows, and he made us a cotton farm. The land fronted on a gravel Route 2. Route 2 was defined on each side of our property by 2 drainage ditches, number 8 ditch and number 9 ditch. The number 8 ditch was a dry ditch, except when the Mississippi River flooded, and number 8 was always flowing, full of poisonous water moccasins and frogs and a few perch. But Daddy built us a house on that ditch bank of number 8, right there beside the bridge. He was clever. He had one side of the house on stilts and the other on the side of the ditch bank to accommodate the annually expected floods. Mama, oh my gracious, she was an incredible role model. Rising well before dawn, milked the cow while one of my 5 brothers slopped the hogs. Yes, I said slop the hogs. And then she made our breakfast while we put on our overalls to get ready to go to the cotton fields. After milking the cow and making our breakfast, Mama made our lunch, which we called dinner, and brought it with her to the field. Usually that would be a gallon jar full of pinto beans, and always with a pan of warm cornbread. She left the field early to go home to make supper. And still, she picked more cotton than any other hand. Do you ever wonder how some of our colleagues can sell hundreds of homes each year? Observing my mother taught me my second lesson, determination. It came easy to my mother. Nothing stopped her. If she had been a realtor, she probably would have been one of those amazing ladies like our Debbie, or Edie, or Jamie, or Summer. Anyway, always selling dozens of homes annually. That's what she would have been like. Now, the firstborn in our family was female. Nobody messed with Edna. And the lastborn was female, our precious little baby sister, Carolyn, who we all thought was our own baby, right? But I believe one of my mother's biggest challenges was raising a girl child in the midst of those 5 honking, testosterone-laden boys. All they loved to taunt me, make fun of me, labeling me a number of disrespectful names, such as white elephant. Wikipedia says a white elephant is a possession which its owner cannot dispose of, and whose cost, particularly that of maintenance, is out of proportion to its usefulness. Another of their favorite descriptions of me was useless. I was also known as the landmark, because the row on which we began early in the morning was the row I would still be on at lunchtime, the landmark. I was not made for farming until I got into real estate. Then I farmed the heck out of Malibu and my database. My brothers' lives was just far more interesting than mine. Mama, make them take me. I remember whimpering that a lot as they would hop in the car and take off to the picture show in the nearest town, or to go swimming on a Sunday afternoon in number 8 ditch, or frog gigging on a hot summer night. They could go far off and pick berries or pick up walnuts, while I had to stay home with Mama and iron or churn butter. They could ride on top of that cotton wagon to the cotton gin where men hung around and no woman was ever seen. Out by the watermelon patch, they could crack jokes that I wasn't supposed to hear because I was a girl, inadequate, a mere female, right? I will slip in an extra D here, for a defining moment comes to my mind. At age 7, I learned the importance of a high credit score, an early lesson for a future real estate person. I accompanied my mama to the grocery store where all the farmers bought their winter supplies on credit. She was piling a few essentials on the counter: a bag of sugar, a sack of flour, some baking soda. My head reached just to the top of the counter and I touched that pretty lavender sack with flowers on it, I knew my mama would make me a school dress with that sack. $7.60, Miss Teasley, the man behind the counter said. Charge it, Mr. Fawcett, she said. And he glanced around the store towards some of the women who were picking out items, and then he said it. Sorry, Miss Teasley, no more credit. She looked stunned, her eyes filled with burning tears of shame. She placed her hand on my shoulder and she turned me towards that front door I had never seen until that moment my mother cried. So much for the new dress. Well, weather in Missouri was no kinder than Alabama. The cycle often repeated itself. Save money to buy seeds, plant the seeds. Too much rain rots the seed, borrow money from the bank to replant. Then as the seedlings sprout, the sun drought would burn them, stunt their growth, and make for another lousy cotton crop. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, right? How many times we've heard our coaches remind us of that. After 10 years of too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, we sold out. That's what I wrote in my diary that day. Today we sold out. Piled everything we could on top of our car and hopped on Route 66 and drove to California, to the fair town of Lost Hills. 350 people lived there out in the middle of the desert in the San Joaquin Valley. So I'll choose duplicate for my next lesson. Yes, like John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. I love that Dorothea Lane photograph, don't you? We moved to a migrant workers camp. We were still poor, but we still gave it no thought. We had parents who knew how to not only survive, but to thrive in that dusty little town out there in the middle of the desert between Bakersfield, California, and the Pacific coast. Daddy got a job operating a gigantic tractor in the nearby gypsum pit, and he bought a house in that funky little dirtbag village on Highway 466. A year or so later, he sold that house, and he bought a nice house in the nearby town of Wasco, building wealth through home ownership, right? At age 17, I married Wasco Tigers quarterback Hero. After all, you could not have sex if you weren't married. My senior year in high school, I was the only married student, which was embarrassing to me because I felt the vibe that all the students knew I had done it. My husband had graduated the year ahead of me. He leased a gas station out there in Lost Hills, and I moved back there and rode the bus to finish high school in Wasco. Summer came, and I, in my little Levi cutoffs, was pumping gas and wiping windshields for the handsome soldiers stopping on their way from Fort Ord to the mysterious city to the south, Los Angeles. Oh, wow. On Saturday nights, I would listen to Lucky Lager Dance Time on the radio and wonder what it must be like in Los Angeles. Bewildered by our new status at ages 18 and 19, after a frustrated Kobe socked me a few times, I used his temper as an excuse to get the heck out of Dodge. I ran away. In the middle of the night, I took the Greyhound bus to LA. I had my cousin Jeannie's address scrawled on a crumpled piece of paper in my pocket. At dawn, when we rolled into downtown LA, I handed that bit of paper to the bus driver. Do you know how I get here? I asked him, and he squinted at the paper, and he pointed to a line of cars, and he said, "You see that row of yellow cars? Take this to the one in the front, and he'll take you there." Jeannie was not expecting me, and she didn't have a telephone. I can't believe the innocence of the era. I rang her bell on the triplex, and when she didn't answer, I rang the bell marked manager. He actually let me into her apartment. And I fell asleep on top of her bed and waited for her to come home. She was a jazz singer, and she worked at night. Divorce and decisions were my fourth and fifth Ds. I had never been to a city, but I had been taught shorthand, and typing, and English was my favorite subject. I found a job as the floating secretary at CBS TV City. My first assignment was to assist a comedian with a local CBS variety show, a young man named Johnny Carson. I was 18 and he was 28. When he was promoted to host a national TV show in New York City, he offered me the job as his personal assistant. I said yes, but then in the end, I stayed in LA and got married. It irritated him somewhat, but we did stay friends until he left this planet about 15 years ago. At CBS and subsequent other production companies, I moved through a number of television shows, including The Twilight Zone and Batman, where I got to be the assistant casting director. Along the way, at age 27, I met an attractive artistic, sorry about that. Do I do this there and there? No. There, hello. The one in the middle is Billy, my husband. That's what I'm trying to say. So, but being, so after Billy, so his name was William A. Graham, but he was known as Billy Graham, you know. So he was a television director and a Yale graduate and the son of a Wall Street lawyer. He lived on his 35-foot boat in Marina del Rey. He rode his motorcycle to the studios every day. So after dating a couple of years, we decided to get married, And at the age 30, I gave birth to my only child. That's him there, Charlie Graham. And that's what he looks like now, a hunk of burning love. Being married to Billy was really great fun. We shot films all over the United States, in New York City and Hawaii and San Francisco, as well as Rome and Mexico and Paris and Spain and London and Scotland. And we sailed that 35-foot boat up and down the Pacific coast. One of the stories of the young lady who sailed from Hawaii to Los Angeles, I guess it was. Yes, congratulations. I did the opposite with Billy, from San Pedro to Hilo, Hawaii. Well, that was my interesting fact. And another was that, I keep that as a reminder of what my body could look like. and yes, that is Sir Paul McCartney on board. That would have been my interesting fact too. We took him sailing. Anyway, that was Billy. Life with Billy was fun. And taking care of my baby and going to journalism school, I learned to be a relatively good photographer. Oh, and this is my most famous picture. It was on the front page of the LA Times. So I was always proud of that. But I loved writing for the college newspaper. And having always worked, I was uncomfortable being just a housewife, unquote. So the camera allowed me to have a function on Billy's sets and be the still photographer. But it was the roaring 60s, and after 10 years, I decided on divorce again. Billy and I raised our son in Malibu in separate homes on friendly turf. And the preamble to NAR's Code of Ethics begins with, under all is the land, right? It may be a bit sentimental, but remembering my father's respect for the land and noticing the potential economic impact, with promising a road to independence. And so at age 40, in April 1976, I received my license to sell California real estate. It was a popular sport amongst newly divorced housewives. Because of our entertainment business connections, and because I lived and understood the Malibu marketplace, and because I absolutely loved being in the real estate business, I was able to attract a number of several celebrity clients. Early in my career, I did transactions representing either the buyer or the seller for Rod Steiger, Charles Bronson, Cicely Tyson, Cleavon Little, remember Blazing Saddles, Charles Bronson, let's see who else, Dustin Hoffman, LeVar Burton, Pierce Brosnan, and a number of heads of studios and producers and directors. But you know, today as I look out at the young faces in this room, I doubt that you know any of the names or the faces of any of these people.
Yeah.
But active in the California Association of Realtors, I met John Douglas, who was a dazzling figure in Beverly Hills luxury real estate. John Douglas recruited me to leave my own little company and join his powerful regional luxury brand, and eventually manage his Malibu location. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. My career soared after I moved to his established company, high-end, known for the highest level of integrity, like Debbie said. Getting listings there was just much easier. The Malibu Board of Realtors asked me to be president, and John Douglas urged me to step up to the challenge. I was afraid to because of my fear of public speaking. So I took a UCLA speech class, which helped me a lot. But what really helped me even more was when I described my anxiety to Johnny Carson. He gave me good advice. He said, "You don't make a speech, you just stand up and talk to them." So that's what I'm trying to do right now. Johnny and we had, as I said, remained good friends over the years, and he was supportive of my real estate career. He loved calling me Madam President when I accepted the board task, and he trusted me with the listing on his Malibu beach home, which we sold to John McEnroe, which leads me to my 6th D, discretion. In the entertainment field, a high value is placed on discretion and confidentiality and relationships, of course. Still, very important considerations for any level of work, right? Any level of our sales era. So, an LA Times hot property columnist, she called me asking her, sorry, I'm getting tangled up here. She called me asking me to be her contact for celebrity news in Malibu. Absolutely not, I said. My response was immediate, because she said, "I'm just asking because I understand you have a deal pending with Johnny Carson and John McEnroe, and that the contract contains a particular clause." Please, Ruth, I said, don't print that without my getting the client's approval. She then told me that she had learned of it because Mr. McEnroe had disclosed it to a sports writer in Paris, and it had already been published. But I did call Johnny, and he surprised me by saying, "Use it, I think it's a cute story." Well, the clause in the purchase agreement provided for Mr. McEnroe to give Mr. Carson 6 private tennis lessons, or he wouldn't sell him the house. But had I not made that call, do you think that Mr. Carson would have been ticked at me? I know he would have. In my late 40s, I met another artist, a talented record producer, a New York-born Sicilian named Tom Catalano. Tom had tremendous success with early Neil Diamond, producing Hot August Night, including Sweet Caroline, plus I'll keep my day job, plus several Helen Reddy hits, Remember Delta Dawn, and so on. So the best man at our wedding was Madonna's personal manager, and I was introduced to help Madonna locate a honeymoon home for Sean Penn and her. She liked the first home I showed her, and the next morning she wanted Sean to see it. I met them at the property. They drove up in his pickup truck. She was scooted right up next to it, you know, behind the steering wheel. It reminded me of my dating days on the farm. And again, discretion was critical. But so much time has passed, I felt I could share that with you today. Tom Catalana had retired from the music business and inactive in that industry. He was uncomfortable living in the entertainment mecca. So we moved to San Francisco, and I opened John Douglas Company there. I told you he was a handsome man. My husband didn't appreciate playing second fiddle to the work I loved so much. And eventually, we parted. And when his top manager retired, John Douglas asked me to return to Los Angeles and manage his flagship office in Beverly Hills. I had been a particularly good manager for John Douglas in Malibu, building his presence there from 12 to 85, and 2 locations. But Beverly Hills, I was awed and intimidated by that challenge. Daring is my 7th D. What I learned in this stage was to listen and to show gratitude and to admire the work. How could you not admire the work of the sales associates? My belief in John Douglas Company was immense. I believed our agents were the best. They lived and operated at a higher standard. They had ethically and professionally, and they were dressed better, and they were kind and knowledgeable. The competition started to notice, and they wanted to be part of our culture. I was sometimes referred to as Agent Whisperer, sometimes referred to as tough, sometimes I was referred to as the soul of the company, and I was also referred to as an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove. With the art of delegation, I had 5 associate managers in that office of only 140. We built that office to be the top producing office in the international system for the 12 years I was on it to be that manager. And along the way, John Douglas had sold his company to a national brand, Coldwell Banker, but nothing changed except the name on the front door. White Elephant, Landmark, useless. I dared to recruit a number of high flyers because I was such a believer in the value of the firm. Have you noticed that when you are clear on your why and your goals and you believe in your value, your career does definitely grow. Well, after 12 years of receiving office awards in behalf of our agents' efforts, the East Coast boss tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to be president and chief operating officer of their greater Los Angeles presence. I was stunned. I caught my breath out loud in the middle of that restaurant where we were lunching, and they asked me that. I actually gasped. What would those 5 brothers think? I told the home office I would think about it. I wasn't sure I could add value. Plus, I felt I had the best job in real estate, managing the top producing office in the country. Think of it, to go from managing one office producing over $1.5 billion a year to being president of a real estate firm of 50 highly productive offices with 3,800 agents. But ultimately, I'm a salesperson, and like you, good salespeople love the challenge, don't we? So, the next 7 years I was president of the Greater Los Angeles Company, steering that sales staff from Santa Barbara to Palm Springs. But I could hardly wait to tell my brothers I had a fancy new title. I could hardly wait every year at our family reunions to show the LA Business Journal engraved glass bowls that were awarded to our company year after year as the top sales office in Los Angeles. And then, sure enough, because my focus was often on the luxury arm of the company, corporate asked me to take a national position for the company and be president of the luxury division of the entire company. In that capacity, I traveled all over the United States, Paris and Rome, Barcelona and so on, addressing groups of agents and executives and managers on the best practices of the 84,000 sales associates in 47 countries. I couldn't believe that it was I standing up there. Some days I felt I was a fraud. Inadequate education, damaged pedigree, and doubting my ability to deliver. I often fell back on the many times my 5 brothers dared me when my mother wasn't looking. Jump into number 8 ditch, Betty Jean. And there I was in the middle of the water moccasins, reacting with defiance instead of good sense. So yes, defiance might be my last D, or maybe it's deficiency. But I can tell you, without equivocation, I am D-driven to overcome my perceived deficiencies. A few years ago, after retiring from my career, God gave me another chance at happiness when I met my present and final husband, a financial advisor, a wonderful man named Bud Myers. We live in Century City. Here's a picture of us. Yeah. Where we laugh and I learn new things from him every day. But what I noticed, retirement made me feel irrelevant in the world. I spoke to Tom Ferry about starting my own luxury real estate coaching business. For many years, Tom and I had worked together hand in glove to make our agents better. Well, you know that Tom is the ultimate influencer. And I was easily swayed that instead of developing my own company, I happily became a Tom Ferry coach. You know what? I'm not proud of all my divorces, but as my husband said to me recently, yesterday has fallen off the calendar. What matters is what we do going forward, right? It seems I leapfrogged the typical discriminations in what, at the executive level, was a male-dominated world. Opportunities seem to find me. If you maintain your disciplines, and if you keep your mindset open, right, opportunities will find you as well. And fortunately now, the possibility of age discrimination is eluding me too. Mind you, as I approach age 86, I still feel I have a long way to go and loads to learn. Divorcing from my deficiencies, that with discipline, determination, daring, and defiance, I am driven to be a dynamite coach. Now, why do I tell this story? Why do I tell this story? For one reason. If I can do it, I know you can. So thank you for listening.
Too late to ignore, and I know too much to go and pretend.